What can you tell us about the band Evelynn?
Dead.
Sick though while it was around.
Right.
Evelynn was the band that Shane and I were in ages and ages ago. That like when it disbanded, we went on to other musical endeavors. Like he played in Between the Buried and Me and did Oh Sleeper, and I started playing in As Lay Dying. And we kind of went in our own different ways. But now that we're back together, it's like.
I'm back on Stage Right crew again.
Yeah, we can just like looking back at Shane. I'm like, oh, I remember like 13 or 14 years ago when I used to look over there and see him, and now we're back together playing music. So Evelynn was and as far as the band itself goes, it was kind of a like tech crazy type Meshuggah Dillinger influenced band.
Nice. And Evelynn actually toured with As I Lay Dying before you were in the band.
That's true.
Yeah, well, that's
no,
how,
you were on that tour.
He was saying before I was in As I Lay Dying, but that's how the connection was made. We were both like some of the biggest bands on Pluto Records at the time, and we ended up doing some shows together, and that's how I had met all of the guys in As I Lay Dying years and years before, or actually a year or two before I started playing with them.
Are there memorable moments from that As I Lay Dying tour? Yeah, with Evelynn.
The first time we saw Amelie was on that tour.
Was it really?
Yeah.
You know what else? The first show we did on that tour, I remember we played in a church base. It was like underground of a church basement to like 6 people at like 1 or 2 o'clock on a Sunday afternoon. So it was like between services, everyone was out, and that was the first time we met all these guys.
Yeah.
And there was no one there, and we stayed with this Dan at his. He had a really rad trailer that he let us stay at. Remember that? He cooked burgers and stuff.
Yeah. Whoa.
And I guess that's not much of a story, but it was just it just goes back to the struggle and how we participated in the struggle. Even though I wasn't in As Lay Dying at the time, when the band started to grow, I still felt a sense of like accomplishment, knowing where the band had come from and experiencing it with Shane and Evelynn. We did like a week or two of shows of that caliber, not really anyone there and not making any money and crashing on people's floors.
Yeah.
I have a story about that tour. We drove through the Mojave and it was 127 degrees outside, and he was driving, but we had to run the heater on our legs because it was the engine was overheating anyway.
The radiator was busted or something.
So we had to run the heater while it's 127 degrees outside, and Nick was driving, but he just like put a stick down there because he got like heat rash all over his legs.
It was so hot that I couldn't actually keep my foot on the pedal, so I had to push it with a stick, and we could only go 20 miles because anything else would like overheat it. So it took us like the entire day to get to Vegas at night.
Wow.
It was awful.
Miserable.
We went to the Hoover Dam that night.
That was like a paying your dues moment.
Yeah.
Too bad it wasn't the last.
And here we are again.
And Nick was saying that you were in Between the Buried and Me for a short stint.
Yeah. About a year, I think.
Talk a little bit about that.
A lot of guitar practicing and vegan food. It was great.
And this was pre-Alaska for people.
Yeah,
that
it was
are
right
watching
before Alaska. Yeah.
So you guys have been doing this for a very long time, and I'm sure that you've handled a bunch of criticism on your way as well. With something interesting is we were talking about the interview that we did in 2009 together, and we actually talked a little bit about criticism. And I'm curious now, here we are many years later, in a very digital age where people can say whatever they want online. How do you know what good criticism is, and how do you know what bad criticism is? In other words, how do you know what's constructive and what's just shit talking?
The source, really. If it's someone from someone you respect or something, like who's in front of you telling you, constructive criticism, that's different than like guy in his like mom's basement talking shit or whatever.
Right.
Yeah, I think people just feel like I don't know, feel super inclined to share their opinion, and I don't think we should take either way. I think we shouldn't take it too much to heart. Like there'll be a lot of get feedback like you guys are like amazing and all that, but if you buy into that, then you get this complex in your head like, yeah, I am sick, you know what I mean? And I don't think we've ever been the type of dudes that have thought like that highly of ourselves. We just try and do what we love and do it in excellence, and like appreciate when people are supportive of us.
Mm-hmm.
And then when people share their opinions on like whether the mix or the vocal choice or anything like that, I mean they have the right to share that, but I mean you can't pay too much attention to it because you let them kind of distract you from the course that you're on, and that you and your friends and your bandmates and brothers have decided, to go with. So criticism is criticism and opinions are opinions, but I don't think they should influence what type of band you are or who you are in that band.
Well, whose opinions do you value?
Nick's.
No, I'm not. Like the opinions that I care about most are of my bandmates, because we're the ones who are creating things together. We have a lot of people in the industry who have seen a lot and have been around a lot, like whether it's like other bands, our management, our label, and their opinion does matter because they have good perspective and they have history and things, and we trust them, and we know that it's not coming from a place of like hate or anger or anything like that. It's just, if
They're on our team.
yeah, these people are on our team, so like, hey, you know what, this is something we noticed, or this was something that you guys did that was awesome. Like, okay, cool, it's cool to hear, but I think the opinions that matter most are the 5 guys in this band, or for me it's the other 4 guys. Like, what do you think, and if whatever one of these dudes says, like, I take very much to heart, because we're all in this together, and at the end of the day, like, it's the 4 or the 5 of us that are gonna like ride or die together, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So those are the dudes that I care about.
We were talking about that interview. I remember shortly after that interview, in 2010, you did this Facebook post of a financial breakdown of mid-level bands.
Which I didn't know was gonna like hit headlines anywhere. But it did.
And Nick, you were talking about paying your dues. So I'm curious about how, throughout the course of your career, from Evelynn to Wovenwar, how are you able to balance a normal job to survive and still pursue your passion?
That's the question and the struggle. Honestly, when you're young, like when we were in Evelynn, we were living with our parents. We were teenagers. We had like no need for money. So as long as we could get like $5 to eat at Wendy's, we were good to go. But at this stage of my life, I'm like 32, and I have bills and stuff like that, and it is a struggle. It's like, how do we do this band and put all that we have into it and give it the attention it needs to thrive and survive, while still honoring our financial responsibilities. And I think that comes down to just hustle. Like all of us are just whether it's like working, when we're at home, like, just doing miscellaneous projects, doing whatever we can to like pay the bills without having to strangle the band for to make a living off of. But it's never I think an easy answer for everyone, because everyone has different situations.
What about for you, Shane? And tie this in with the financial breakdown that you did.
Just like Nick said, figuring out ways to make it work. We're like we're in the baby steps of this band, and like, we're not going to make any money right now, and so it's just the hustle.
Yeah.
The hustle.
Just honestly, you just have to do what it takes to survive.
Yeah.
So
I was reading this interview that you did, Nick, in 2008 after As I Lay Dying got nominated for a Grammy, and the person asked, do you feel pressure with having to write a new album? And you said that there's always pressure. Is there pressure with Wovenwar, with the new band, or is it kind of like you were able to recreate yourself with this band?
To just do anything that we do in excellence, and I think because of that we put a lot of pressure on ourselves for everything. We want to be an awesome live band, so we care about putting out a good show, whether that means like practicing 3 hours or taking our care of ourselves so that we're like physically able to put on a show, or just being at home spending countless hours at night just trying to write a riff or a lyric or something. Like, we put a lot of pressure on ourselves because we never want to put out or come up with something that feels like it's a regression in any sort of way. And I'm proud of all of us, because I feel like over the years I've watched everyone become better versions of themselves, or become better at what they do. Even though Shane and I weren't in a band with one another before Wovenwar, or between Wovenwar and Evelynn, like, I watched him go from my friend that's a sick guitar player to my friend that's actually like an incredible singer who was also good at guitar. You know what I mean? And just watching each person in the band in this small community of just ourselves that we have, watching us progress, and then creating an album where I can hear that progression, and it just feels natural and beyond what we had done in the past. That, I think, is so gratifying, but it comes from us putting that on ourselves always.
I mean, As I Lay Dying was a huge band, and I'm sure people ask you guys for advice all of the time, like younger musicians. But I'm actually more curious about bad advice. Maybe some advice that people gave you when you were younger in the Evelynn days that you took that later down the road you're like, oh man, I shouldn't have done that. Is there anything like that?
Bad advice. Wow.
One thing that I think is advice to be taken with a grain of salt is the just completely go for it. Like, plan A is the only plan there is, and just if that's what you want, just do it completely. Because when we were young, that was what we were told, and that's what we had decided was the only way to make your band work, was to like not do anything but go for your band 100%. That's great advice when you're young and you can, but I have friends that do that when they have like kids or people that depend on them. And for me, I would tell them, be smart and like be prudent with how you spend your time and try and find another way, because I don't think it's fair for somebody to go 100% and like abandon everything else just in pursuit of the dream when there's people that rely and count on you. So
right.
I think that blanket statement of like, just only going for that one thing doesn't work. It depends on what your situation is. Luckily none of us have children or like people that count on us too heavily. I mean, some of the guys are married, but that's different. So it's something that we're doing right now, but it's just because we can.
Shane, is there anything that you would have done differently over the past decade?
No, it got me here, and I'm really happy where I'm at. I mean, like we talked about the hustle and the struggle. It's I wouldn't rather be anywhere else. I mean, this is what I love to do. So, and the last question, I would say nobody has ever not got in a better place by being by not being humble. Like
Yeah.
we were just on tour with Thank You Scientists, which is this absurdly talented band and some of the most humble musicians in the world, and that make it's like this infectious thing that just breeds around people when they're humble. And I don't know, being not humble will never work for. I mean, it might work for like Justin Bieber or something, but it's not going to work in our in our genre.